Level 1. The Apprentice. You're 16 years old. It is the year 1346. You don't know it yet, but you are standing at the absolute epicenter of the end of the world. You are a merchant's apprentice from Genoa, Italy, sent here to learn the spice and silk trade. Your life is simple. You wake up at dawn, you tally inventory, you sweep the stone floors of the warehouse, and you listen to the sailors tell lies about the edge of the earth. But the sailors aren't telling lies today. Today, they are terrified. The Mongol army of the Golden Horde, led by Khan Johnny Beg, has surrounded the city walls. The siege has lasted for months, and food is running out. You stand on the high stone ramparts and look out at the Mongol encampment. You notice something strange. The enemy isn't attacking. Their camp is terrifyingly quiet. Through the fog, you see massive wooden catapults being pulled into position. You brace for the impact of flaming boulders. Instead, the sky rains flesh. The Mongols are catapulting the plague-infected corpses of their own dead soldiers over the city walls of Kaffa to infect the inhabitants. A body crashes through the roof of a nearby market stall. The stench is immediate and unbearable. The corpse is bloated, covered in grotesque black boils, its skin rotting from the inside out. You cover your mouth and run, but you don't realize that the true weapon isn't the corpse. The true weapon is microscopic. The true weapon is the fleas riding on the black rats that scatter from the broken bodies, carrying the Yersinia pestis bacterium straight into your streets. Within a week, your master falls ill with a sudden, raging fever. 3 days later, he is dead. The city descends into absolute madness. The gates are closed. The streets are choked with the dead and the dying. You pack a single bag of clothes, steal whatever silver coins you can find from your dead master's lockbox, and run for the docks. You bribe a desperate captain to let you on to one of the 12 Genoese galleys fleeing the city. You think you have escaped hell. You don't realize you are bringing it with you. Level 2. The Fugitive. You're 17 years old. It is October 1347. You have been at sea for weeks, surviving on hardtack and stagnant water. The galley finally arrives at the port of Messina, Sicily. As the ship docks, the harbor master comes aboard to collect tariffs. He takes one look at the crew and orders the ship quarantined. But it is already too late. The disease has mutated and festered in the cramped, humid belly of the ship. You watch as sailors who were perfectly healthy 2 days ago suddenly collapse on the wooden deck. You see the first symptoms. It always starts with a fever that makes the victim shiver uncontrollably, their temperature spiking to 106 degrees Fahrenheit. Then come the headaches, the nausea, the agonizing aches in the joints. But the true horror appears on the second day. You watch the ship's navigator pull down his collar, screaming in agony. Beneath his armpit is a swollen lymph node, a tumor-like mass, the size of an apple, throbbing and oozing pus. The sailors call it a bubo, or a gavasciolo. It is the hallmark of the bubonic plague. Left untreated, 80% of the men who show this sign will be dead within 8 days. You don't wait to die on the ship. In the dead of night, you slip overside of the galley into the dark, freezing water of the harbor. You swim to the Sicilian shore, hauling your wet, exhausted body onto the cobblestones. You think you have outrun it again, but the rats from your ship have also swam ashore. By morning, the disease is spreading rapidly all over the island. You keep moving. You buy passage on smaller merchant boats, traveling north. But everywhere you go, the shadow follows. The disease spreads rapidly northwest across Europe, striking France, Spain, Portugal, and England. You are outrunning a storm that covers the entire continent. You are a ghost moving through a world that is dying around you. Level 3. The Doctor's Assistant. You're 18 years old. It is 1348. And you are in the city of Avignon, France, the seat of the papacy. The plague is no longer a rumor from the east. It is a slaughterhouse. You have run out of money. You need food, so you take the only job available. You become an assistant to a physician. You follow the doctor through the winding, filthy streets of the city. Pigs, chickens, and goats roam freely, and raw sewage is dumped directly from windows into the alleys. French and Italian cities are so filthy that streets are literally named after human waste, like Rue Myrtelet. You believe this filth is what is killing people. The doctors tell you the disease is caused by miasma, bad air, foul smells, and a corruption of the atmosphere. They tell you it is caused by an astrological conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, or a punishment from God. No one knows what a bacterium or a germ is. The discovery that germs cause disease will not be made until the 1800s. Your daily life is a carnival of grotesque medical failures. The doctors believe the human body is governed by 4 humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. To balance these humors, they order you to perform bloodletting. You take a sharp blade and slice open the veins of a screaming teenage girl, draining her blood into a bowl, completely unaware that you are only weakening her further. You watch physicians prescribe the most insane treatments imaginable. You watch people rub cut-up, dead pigeons onto their oozing buboes. You watch them rub themselves with onions and herbs or drink vinegar and poisons to try and kill the illness. You watch doctors burst the buboes of patients with hot irons, the smell of burnt flesh filling the cramped rooms. You are surrounded by the dead. Half the population of Paris, 50,000 people, will eventually die. Florence's population will be reduced from 120,000 to 50,000. You wear a cloth over your face, breathing through a sponge soaked in vinegar, terrified of the invisible miasma. You don't know that the real threat is the fleas hiding in the straw beds you are kneeling on. Level 4, the witness. You're 19 years old. The disease is mutating. The bubonic plague, spread by fleas, was a nightmare, but what you see next is pure apocalypse. A new variant emerges in the freezing winter months. Pneumonic plague. You are standing in a crowded church. A man next to you starts to cough. He doesn't have the black boils. He doesn't have the swollen glands. But as he coughs, bright red, free-flowing blood splatters onto the stone floor. He is infected in his lungs, and as he sneezes, invisible air droplets containing the Yersinia pestis bacteria fill the room. You hold your breath and run out of the heavy oak doors, but the people inside are already dead. Pneumonic plague spreads directly from person to person through the air, and it has a mortality rate of 95 to 100%. Those infected will drown in their own blood within 3 days. You see the breakdown of human morality. The Italian chronicler Agnolo di Tura writes that the illness seems to strike through breath and sight, causing fathers to abandon their children and wives to abandon their husbands. You walk past houses where the doors have been nailed shut from the outside, the screams of the infected trapped inside echoing through the quiet streets. You see a third form of the disease, septicemic plague, which infects the bloodstream directly. The victims don't even have time to develop buboes. They simply develop a high fever, purple skin patches from internal bleeding, and die within hours, an untreated mortality rate near 100%. You stop sleeping. You stop speaking to people. Every human being you look at is a loaded gun pointed at your head. Level 5, the corpse bearer. You're 20 years old. The death toll is so catastrophic that the basic functions of civilization have completely collapsed. Nearly a third of the European population has perished before any government authority has time to react. There is no one left to bury the dead for money or friendship. You are drafted into service. If you refuse, the city guards will execute you. You become a corpse bearer. You push a heavy wooden cart through the desolate streets of a forgotten town. The smell is something you will never wash out of your mind. It is a sweet, rotting, metallic stench that clings to your hair and your clothes. You enter homes where entire families lie dead in their beds, their bodies blackened and decomposing. You drag them out by their ankles. There are no priests left to give last rites, because monks, nuns, and priests were especially hard hit since they cared for the sick. There is no room in the churchyards. You help dig massive pits outside the city walls, piling the multitude of dead deep into the earth, hundreds of bodies layered on top of each other, separated only by a thin dusting of dirt. Sometimes you don't dig deep enough, and you watch wild dogs drag the bodies forth and devour them in the streets. You have buried thousands of people. You stop seeing them as humans. They are just heavy, rotting weight. You are numb. You expect to wake up every morning with a fever, waiting for your turn in the pit. The Black Death is killing up to 50 million people in Eurasia. You are standing on a mountain of corpses, and the sky is black with the smoke of burning clothes. Level 6, the flagellant. You're 21 years old. The year is 1349. Logic has vanished. Science has failed. The surviving population believes that this is the absolute end of the world, a divine punishment sent by an angry god for the sins of humanity. You witness the birth of madness. You are sitting in a tavern when you hear chanting in the distance. You step outside. A procession of hundreds of men and women are marching slowly down the street, their heads bowed, singing hymns of repentance. They strip down to the waist. In their hands they hold heavy leather whips tipped with iron spikes. They are the flagellants. With every step, they swing the whips over their shoulders, striking their own backs until their skin is shredded and blood flows down their legs. They are physically punishing themselves to win God's forgiveness, to bleed out the sin before the plague can take them. Religious fanaticism turns incredibly dark, incredibly fast. The frightened, desperate crowds need someone to blame. Because 14th century governments are at a loss to explain the disease, Europeans turn to conspiracy theories. They claim that marginalized groups are poisoning the city wells to spread the sickness. You watch in horror as mobs gather torches and pitchforks. They target foreigners, beggars, lepers, Romani, and especially Jewish communities. In the Strasbourg massacre of February 1349, you hear that about 2,000 Jews are murdered by terrified citizens. By 1351, 60 major and 150 smaller Jewish communities will be destroyed across Europe. You keep your head down. You realize that the plague is terrifying, but the panic of surviving humans is infinitely worse. Level 7, the infected. You're 22 fit years old. It is 1350. You have survived the Mongols, you have survived the galleys, you have survived the mass graves, and you have survived the mobs. You think you are immune. You think God has spared you. Then, one Tuesday morning, you wake up shivering. You pull the heavy wool blankets over your chest, but you cannot get warm. Your teeth chatter. A crushing headache pulses behind your eyes. You try to stand up, but your joints scream in agonizing pain. You stumble to the wash basin and look in the mirror. You see it. In the hollow of your neck, a swollen, dark mass is protruding. A bubo. The panic hits you so hard your knees buckle. You have the bubonic plague. You know exactly what happens next. You have watched thousands of people die this exact same way. You drag yourself to your bed. You do not call for a doctor because you know they can do nothing. You do not call for a priest because there are none left. You lie in the dark waiting for the end. Day 2. The fever spikes. You are hallucinating. You see the faces of the sailors from Kaffa, the faces of the bodies you threw into the pits. Day 3. You begin vomiting. Your skin becomes extremely sensitive. Even the touch of the blanket feels like razor blades. Day 4, the bubo on your neck turns purple, then black. It is the size of an egg, hard and throbbing with a heartbeat of its own. You are waiting for the spots, the freckle-like rashes that signal internal bleeding and imminent death. But day 5 comes and you don't die. Instead, the bubo ruptures. The pain is blinding, a sharp agony that makes you scream into the empty room. But as the thick, foul-smelling pus drains from the swelling, the fever suddenly breaks. You lie in a pool of your own sweat, breathing heavily, staring at the wooden ceiling. You are part of the lucky 20 to 50%. Your immune system has miraculously fought off the Yersinia pestis bacterium. You are weak, you are scarred, but you are alive. The disease could not kill you. Level 8, the inheritor. You're 26 years old. Is 1354. The Great Pandemic, the initial terrifying wave of the Black Death, has finally burned itself out. The plague will return repeatedly in the coming centuries, but the apocalypse of 1347 to 1353 is over. You walk out into a world that has been fundamentally broken and entirely rebuilt. You walk through the countryside. Half the population of Europe is gone. The continent is eerily quiet. But as you look around, you notice something strange. Prior to the plague, the continent was a strict feudalistic society, managed by lords who practically owned the peasants. But now, there are no peasants left. The overwhelming mortality rate has caused a massive shortage of workers. You walk up to a wealthy landowner's estate. 5 years ago, you would have begged for a copper coin to work his fields. Today, he comes out to meet you. His crops are rotting in the fields because he has no men to harvest them. He offers you a wage. You shake your head and demand triple the amount. He hesitates, then agrees. He has no choice. Wages have soared in response to the labor shortage. Landowners are forced to substitute monetary rents for labor services just to keep tenants. You realize the power dynamic has completely crumbled. Because land is abundant and prices of food are lower, commoners are coming to enjoy more freedom. Workers travel freely in search of the most favorable positions. You save your wages. You buy your own plot of land, something a commoner could never have dreamed of a decade ago. You are no longer an apprentice, a fugitive, or a gravedigger. You are a free man with property. You stand in your field, looking at the horizon. You survived the greatest natural disaster to strike Europe in the late Middle Ages. You survived the agonizing fever, the superstitious mobs, and the horrific treatments. The world you were born into was destroyed, but in its ashes, a new world, one where the working class has value, where the rigid chains of feudalism are broken, has been forged in blood and suffering. This is the Black Death, a terrifying biological engine that took a crowded, dirty, superstitious world and burned it to the ground. You climb the ranks of survival from a terrified apprentice fleeing a siege to a man bleeding in a dark room, waiting for the end. You realize that a pandemic doesn't just kill the weak. It kills the old world, leaving the survivors to inherit the earth, forever changed by the memory of the black boils and the silence that followed.